Hello everybody, welcome back to another Pandora Hearts discussion video. This time, volume number 22. Only two more volumes left after this one. I know in the last video I threw it out to everybody to give me suggestions. Continue to do so, even if you suggested something on the last video and since then you've thought of something new. Feel free to add it. I'm going to take a look at everyone's suggestions, take a look if certain titles come up more often than others, and also the availability, just, whether I can actually get a hold of these things or not, and I'll figure it out from there. So again, if you're new to these videos, total spoilers ahead, and I have not read ahead in this series, so I have no idea what happens beyond this volume. So let's talk about volume number 22, because this is the volume where, holy crap, Pandora Hearts gets all meta all of a sudden. We'll try and start at the beginning, and I will probably wander all over the place like I usually do. So this volume kind of serves two purposes. First off, it kind of reveals, I guess, what I call them the true villain of the series. I'm not too sure what to say, because in some ways I kind of feel like it's me, or like collectively us as readers are the villains of this series, but we'll get to that. Also, what this volume ends up being is, once again, another swan song volume. Crap, like, all these amazing characters, we're losing them all. I don't know what the obsession is with manga and anime and all these things where it's like, oh, we're coming up to the big Titanic battle, let's start killing off awesome secondary characters. So, of course, 2 volumes ago, we had Uncle Oscar. Last volume, it was Duke Barma. And now this volume, it is Brake's turn. And I mean, it's not like it's really shocking. We've been kind of seeing Brake's demise being, foretold a lot over the last couple of volumes. Well, I mean, going back quite a bit now. So I guess in the long, grand scheme of things, it's not that shocking. But it still saddens me because he's such a great character. And he has been the one character that I think has truly understood just how odd Oz is. I mean, how many volumes was it? It was so many volumes back where he actually was the character who said to Oz, where in the world are you? And I thought it was a great bookend to the character that he again posed that question to Oz here in what is probably his final appearance, and such different reactions from Oz, and such different, well, we don't know what the answer is this time around, although my suspicion is that Oz's answer was like, I'm right here, because he had all these visions of all the people in his life that he loves and that are important to him and who care about him. And that's my gut feeling. I mean, the words weren't actually said, but my gut feeling is his answer was right where I should be, or, right here, or something along those lines. But here we are now, of course, that Oz and company really have kind of exorcised their demons. Alice knows who she is and sort of the truth of her existence. Oz knows who he is, and Raven or Gil, he knows his story. These 3 characters who really started off being very clueless about their pasts and about who they truly were and what their origins were, finally now know. And they have moved to a point of complete acceptance. And not just of themselves, but of the people around them as well. And so it's cool to see where Brake starts off the series being the one to recognize that there's all these fractured individuals and all these sort of problems and psychological emptiness and everything else. And now here we are at Brake's sort of swan song, and all he can do is express such like happiness and satisfaction that he's lived to see these characters finally realize themselves and accept themselves and to accept each other. And I think it's really like having Brake's stamp of approval on this is what seals the deal. I mean, we know as readers that these characters have had a huge transformation in the past couple of volumes, but having Brake sort of, say, yes, that is it actually has happened. It's a good moment to have, especially as we head into these sort of last 2 volumes of the series and this sort of obviously big battle that seems to be coming. And we also, of course, have the book starting with him and his last sort of conversation with Shelley, who we pretty much know that he was very much in love with, and her sort of advice to him to, not give up and to not let people go. And it ends up being a really beautiful bookend with the end of the book, but we'll get there. So our first chapter really focuses on Break and his reactions to the new sort of emotional status quo of our heroes. And of course it has our heroes gathering with Sharon and Break and, Duke Rainsworth and all of them assembling at Lutwidge Academy and then gathering and heading off to Sablier, where we enter into our second chapter where we finally find out what the deal is with Echo and Noise or Zwei or Doljum and here's a little thing that I found kind of interesting, and I'll ask you guys how you felt about it, because at first when I was reading it, I was like, did they screw up the translation? Because when Vincent as a child first meets Echo, it's actually Noise, and she seems to be the more sort of demure and calm and very sad and sorrowful individual. And then when he meets this other sort of more crazed individual, that individual says they're Echo. And it seems really inverted in terms of the behaviors that we see with these characters now, where Echo is this very calm, cool, almost lacking emotion, and we have Noise, who is this complete nut job. And I was a little surprised by this. Like I said, at first when I was reading it, I thought, did they screw up? Were they supposed to have flipped it and the translation screwed it up? But part of me wonders if maybe it was Vincent's influence that, Zwei sort of became because of her involvement with Vincent. I'm not too sure. Or maybe, this is just a maybe too, we know that the Echo personality was created in order to sort of cope with the chain. And I have to say, this is one sort of explanation that I did not see coming. I really did not see that Echo's origin was going to be that she was a Baskerville who couldn't control her chain, and so it basically shattered her mental state. I was very, very surprised by this. And having this Echo personality that's meant to sort of shield the contractor, the Noise, we find out that sort of Noise is the true personality and that Echo is this created personality. And it seems to be very tied into the chain, because we know that the chain that Zwei controls can sort of control people's minds and make them do things that they wouldn't normally do. And they say that the chain itself, its power, is what's created this second personality, which I kind of wonder then, does that mean if the chain was destroyed or somehow excised from Echo's body, would that mean that the Echo personality would completely disappear? I don't know. But I kind of wonder, maybe, we all know they got pulled into the abyss. So maybe it was the Zwei personality, the Noise personality, that was prevalent when she was drawn into the abyss, and it went completely nuts. And the Echo personality sort of became colder to compensate for the extra sort of emotion and madness of the Noise personality. I am just theorizing because I have no idea, but like I said, it just, the way that it was drawn, the way that the character spoke, all those things they seem to be inverted. The personality that I thought would be Noise was called Echo, and vice versa. So let me know your thoughts. Have you read like an actual fan translation, or if maybe you've read the direct Japanese? I don't know. I mean, maybe it's answered later on. I don't know. Obviously I haven't read Beyond, but like I said, that was something that really just kind of surprised me. But it was sweet too, this whole thing with Vincent. Like, you really can see that heartbreak of his, that he's not normal, and that he values Noise because she feels that she's not normal either. Neither one of them feel that they have a place to belong. So you can see, I guess, where that relationship, like, I've wondered, why is Noise so obsessed with Vincent? And why is she so, into Vincent? Well, there's the answer, right? It's all about that acceptance. The fact that Vincent said, we are normal together, and didn't really care about her madness and her incapability of being a good Baskerville. So we see that sort of background. And of course, it launches us right into Zwei, like, torturing Ada. Because, what else are you going to do? Now, you know what, guys? I want to just sort of, like, it happens in the manga at about this point that we see that essentially they were riding Griffin. It was, Zai Vasilius, Zwei, and Ada. They were flying on Griffin. And then something happened that Zwei and Ada fell off, and I'm really not too sure. Like, I was looking at the art, and I'm like, did Zai do something that, like, tried to knock her off, and inadvertently Ada went with her, or did something else attack them? Like, I really wasn't too sure what I was seeing there. Or I mean, I guess we have, like, these cracks appearing in the sky and these chains coming out, so maybe it was a chain or something crack in the sky that caused Griffin to go kind of haywire and dump them off. I'm not too sure. I wasn't too sure. I was looking at the artwork and trying to figure that out, and it didn't seem clear to me what exactly had happened to cause Ada and Zwei to fall off. And then we have our heroes arriving in Sablier. Now, guys, come on. I know it's sort of cheese, but you had to love the whole, like, little girl and her mom about to be killed by the chain, and all of a sudden, be rabbit time. Like, I mean, Oz finally gets himself an honest-to-God hero's entrance. It was cool. Like I said, it was a little cheesy. It was a little predictable. I kind of knew. I was like, I bet you anything there's going to be some scythe action that saves them. But I didn't care, because so much in this book, Oz has been kind of doubting and feeling weak, and when he has used his powers, he's kind of lost a bit of control. And to see him be a hero, and to see him arrive and be in full control of himself, and to be able to use his powers in a way that was helpful without flying off the deep end, it was cool. It really shows how far the character has come over these 22 volumes of manga. And and how much did you love, like, that owl is like this little thing earlier on, but it's this huge honking fat owl that managed to fly everybody there. I thought that was funny, and Rhyme, like, yelling at everybody, he's friendly, I swear he's friendly. And we have our heroes plunge ahead into Sablier. They leave Rhyme and Duke Rainsworth behind, so it's just our usual three plus Sharon and Break with them, and they head into the city, and we have this great little character moment. And I've said it over the course of these volumes that I love that Mochizuki always allows for this kind of stuff. These little conversations that aren't really, like, important to the action, but are just so important to the emotional state of our characters, where Oz says, when this is all over, I want to have a tea party like Uncle Oscar did. And you know, later on, Break says about how they probably all knew that would never happen for all of them, but that it was incredible and so satisfying to hear Oz speak so definitively that there was a future for them all. And I thought it was a really great little exchange, and of course Alice screaming that she wants meat, 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 and, you know, Raven freaking out on her, and this whole thing with Sablier, of course we know that it happened before where they all got separated, and it happens again this time. But this time it was so cool just to see these little character moments with characters who don't always spend time together. Like that whole thing with Raven or Gil and Alice, where she just kind of blurts out, "You've really grown up." And he's like, "Whoa, why? Where did that even come from?" And she's like, "I don't know. It just came out of my mouth." Like, and the whole apology and Gil saying, you know, "I said such horrible things to you when I was a kid, and I was so angry at you." And Alice kind of like, "I don't even care. Like, that's not who you are. The Raven in front of me right now is Raven. Whatever you were before, it doesn't matter." So we have the, like, you know, the real, like, we've seen these two characters getting along better, and it's always been sort of, I think, Oz is a bit of a catalyst. But in this moment, we see this, again, this last sort of little lingering doubt or, you know, remorse that Gil has about his behavior and the way that he thought and felt towards Alice. And again, he's able to let it go, and Alice is able to sort of put his mind at ease and be like, "You know what, man? Water on the bridge. It's done." And we have Oz by himself, and I said in, like, what was it? Was it the last video where I was saying I wondered if Jack was actually gone, and I was like, okay, like, we saw him crumble and everything else, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's gone. And here we have it, of course, Oz calling out to Jack and saying, "I know you can hear me, and I know you're still there." And Jack says to him, "Well, of course, I'm your contractor. This is my body. You'll never be able to get rid of me completely." And Oz says to him, "Well, I'm sorry, but your body's mostly chained now, and the NQs is 3/4 of the way around." And they have this little conversation about whether this is really what Lacey wanted. And then it ends with Oz saying, "Hey, Jack, you know, I hate you. I despise you. But let's make a deal." And we don't know what that deal is, and I'm sure it's going to come into play in the next volume or two. But, you know, again, Mochizuki leaves us hanging on that one. But we know that, okay, yep, Jack, not gone, not out of the count. And then, of course, we have Sharon is alone. She summons Equus to sort of protect her, and she encounters Lottie, and then eventually Lily, and I don't even remember, is it Zeke, or I don't even remember that guy's name. That's pretty bad. But anyway, she encounters the Baskervilles, and who comes to her rescue but Rhyme, saying, you know, "Wait, I cannot fight you even a little bit. I just want to talk." And we leave that there. And then we go to the point where this story gets weird. Like not bad weird. Don't get me wrong. Like, when I was reading it, I was like, wow, this is cool and kind of freaky all at the same time. And I kind of wonder, like, where Mochizuki's head was at when she was writing this. And so we have, of course, Glenn and Vincent, and they are talking to Jury, the old crone, and Glenn says to her, basically, open the gate to the past because this needs to be fixed, and we don't have time to consult and blah, blah, blah. And Jury reveals to him that she won't make the decision herself. And this sort of pocket dimension where the last Baskerville door is breaks apart into being almost like a courtroom. And we find out there isn't just one lurking eye, there are many. And that they are basically there to make good stories and to be entertained. And like, I think it's Glenn at one point that says, like, who's even reading these stories? And I'm sitting there going, this guy is reading this story. Like I said, like, I almost felt like she was pointing fingers at me like, it's all your fault. You know, it's all your fault for wanting to be entertained that these characters are going through such crap. It's all your fault. And I didn't know how to feel about that. I felt like, oh, you know, okay, yeah, like, I mean, I guess, like, it in a way, it almost breaks that fourth wall, right? Where, I mean, the characters aren't self-aware, like, in that sense. Like, it's not like Deadpool talking to the audience or anything, but it kind of breaks that boundary just a little bit, where you have these odd characters who are like, our existence is beyond your comprehension, but they are trying to decide about what to allow based on what will make the best story. And I'm sitting there going, like, that as a writer is exactly what I do and what other writers do and what readers want, and which is creating these constantly difficult situations for our characters to overcome and putting them through torture in a lot of cases, and yes, even sometimes choosing to kill characters. And we are all doing it and torturing these worlds that we create for the purpose of entertainment. And I thought it was a pretty meta statement on the whole thing, and I thought, well, I mean, I guess if I was a fictional character, I'd really hate this guy's guts. But so they argue about this whole thing, and this is where we find out finally sort of the whole reason that the Abyss and the Glens exist is that these lurking eyes basically created the Abyss, or gave the Abyss to Glenn as a way of making things interesting. It was basically it was like Mochizuki saying, as a writer, I created the Abyss as a plot device, and I just threw it out to my characters to see what would happen. And that's pretty much exactly what these lurking eyes are saying they did. And they talk about how other worlds have already come to an end, how some of the worlds ended before this incarnation of Glenn, and they start arguing about what they think would make the best story. And they're like, well, it's come to its natural end. Like, we're not going to let you go into the past because this is just how it ends. This is it. This is a satisfying ending. It's come to this. And naturally, Glenn's not happy about this. And I thought it was kind of cool that they had sort of Leo and the Glenn before Oswald. All of a sudden his name just is gone. But them sort of conversing, you know, about this, and, you know, the Glenn before Oswald, he's just like laughing hysterically. He's like, this is messed up. Like, this is so screwed up. How can you not laugh? And we find out that these lurking eyes, they become shocked that Vincent is there. And so basically what we find out is these lurking eyes are the ones who have been behind destroying the children of ill omen. And that the reason that they did was because they are an aberration of the Abyss, but they are sort of like an unknown. Like, it's like, I'm trying to put into words my thoughts on it. What I got out of this, and if you thought of it as a different way, then by all means, I'd love to hear your theory. But basically what I got out of it was that they took this thing, the Abyss, they gave it to the Glens to basically say, mess with it, see what happens, have a nice day. We're going to see whether it turns into something cool or not. But the Abyss isn't just a pawn to be pushed around. That the Abyss has sort of a intelligence to it. And we knew this already, right? We knew this from the whole thing of it inhabiting the White Alice. And so we know that the Abyss itself has some level of sentience. And what it seems is that it is almost like, I took it that it was almost like rebelling, right? That these children of ill omen were almost the Abyss's way of rebelling and creating these catalysts, these things that were unpredictable, that instead of being controlled by the lurking eyes and by Glenn, it was almost like the abyss caused these aberrations just to muck with things. And this was kind of how I took it. And I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but they seemed, as far as I read it, they seemed to make it pretty clear that it was something that came out of the abyss itself. It clearly was not in the design of the lurking eyes, because they're pretty much completely ignorant of these children of ill omen, and they're powerless to stop them. And we realize that this is why Glenn has kind of brought Vincent along from the start, and I think I kind of said that in the last one. But it was basically because he didn't trust Jury and figured when it royally came down to it, he would just use Vincent's powers to push ahead and do what he wanted to do. And of course, Break is in this dimension as well, because we know that he is a child of ill omen as well. And it's allowed him to kind of stumble into this space. And he's sort of fighting with Glenn and Vincent and everything else, because he's saying, like, it's not wrong to try and save this world, but what you're trying to do is the wrong thing. Like, you're basically trying to erase a whole segment of our world and sugarcoat it in a way that you think you're doing something good, but it's really quite selfish, and you're destroying like a whole bunch of lives. And there's this great moment where Break like freaks on Vincent and basically is like, this is your problem, that you just keep looking to the past. You won't live now. You won't look, how do you think you can't move ahead because you keep looking back? And it almost seems to me like Vincent gets it. Like, I'm not too sure exactly how that's going to work. And we see that there was a connection between Leo and Vincent, because Leo asserts his own personality, or like his own will, to stop Oswald from killing Vincent. And at first Vincent's put out, and that's when Break freaks out on him. And I think that's the reason why, like, Glenn eventually goes into the door to go to the past, and Vincent follows. And I don't think he's following Oswald or even the title of Glenn per se. I think he truly feels devoted to Leo. At least that's what I hope, because, Leo kind of deserves it. Oswald, I think that dude's kind of a bit of a dick. Like, I get maybe where, like, here's the thing, and this is what bothers me, I guess, about Oswald's character, because his whole thing is that he seems all put out that Jack screwed him over. He's not talking about going into the past, and especially now that he knows the truth. It's not like he's saying, you know what, I'm going to the past to save my sister, because there was no reason for her to die, that we were just manipulated and lied to. There was no reason that she had to be hurt. But he's not saying those things. He just seems pissed that Jack screwed him over, and that Jack tricked him, and that Jack manipulated him. But here's the thing, folks. If Lacey didn't die, would Jack have gone cuckoo? I mean, really, let's face it. Jack went cuckoo because Lacey disappeared, because Lacey died. I mean, it's not so much that Jack met Lacey that's the problem, or even that Jack existed. It's the problem that the Baskervilles destroyed Lacey's existence. So this is where I can't really abide by what Oswald is doing. I mean, I understand, obviously, Oz and Gil and Alice and all them, like, they are fighting because they realize that the existence they have right at this moment will not happen if the past is altered. So I get why they're fighting against it. And I understand that drive to do those things. But I find it harder to sympathize with Oswald, because he seems to be so driven just by hate and by this sort of need for vengeance, where if he just kind of stopped and actually allowed himself to feel something, like beyond those negative emotions, maybe he'd realize, like, this is the moment to save your sister, guy. And again, it still would probably accomplish the exact same thing. Jack went crazy because Lacey died. If Lacey didn't die, if Lacey wasn't tossed into the abyss, Jack may have been a good dude. So what? Anyway, I mean, that's my take on it. We'll see what happens in the next couple volumes, and maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe that is where his head is at. But so far, the only real intention that we've heard from him is just to stop Jack from ever interacting with them at all. So now, of course, Glenn and Vincent are gone. Brake is terribly injured. And we have this whole thing where we find out that he had this conversation with Cheryl, and she was basically, Duke Rainsworth, and she basically said to him, we think that Oz was allowed to live, that Duke Barma saved him, because perhaps his powers can help. But if you think for a moment that his powers are going to go out of control, you need to kill him. And Brake is like, he tells her that was my intention right from the beginning. And now he's sitting there wounded and pretty much sure that he's going to die. And he says, I'm sorry, this is the first time I'm going to break a promise to you because I can't do it. I can't kill him. And this again is one of those things where we have another step in the evolution of the relationships of these characters. And Brake having such emotion. I mean, I think Brake has been a very manipulative and sneaky character, and a character that we really haven't been sure just where his alliances really are and, what side he's really playing. I mean, up until the point where he confessed, or that we found out that his promise to the Abyss was to actually end her, to stop her from being the intention. Up until that point, I mean, I totally believed that he was playing everybody and that he might have been on the side of the Abyss. So it was nice to sort of see this final declaration where he basically says, I'm going to disobey this person that I have been so truthful and dedicated to because I can't kill Oz. And I think that represented such a great evolution of their relationship and really was a nice sort of beginning to cap off the whole thing where we saw in the first chapter of him asking Oz again, where in the world are you? And him, that appreciation of hearing Oz talk about the future like it was a sure thing. I thought that was a really great little bit to put in there. And I really think the only reason that it was there was for that purpose, to show Brake's true feelings about Oz and about, Oz's friends. Because it really didn't need to be there. I don't think it was really necessary, other than to show the character and how his affection for these characters has, in fact, truly grown. And then we have him realizing that Oz and the others are just sort of outside this dimension, and he uses his abilities as a cursed child to bring them in. Now, or a child of ill omen. Now, we know Alice is a child of ill omen. She has red eyes, so he tells them to go through the door to go after Glenn and after Vincent. And I'm going to say that that's how they did it, because Glenn used Vincent's powers to blow the locks off, but then he seemed to use the sword, which is the key. He used the sword to actually go into it. And then Vincent, of course, could follow because he's a child of ill omen. But I'm guessing it's Alice's ability that's sort of allowing them to proceed. Or, I don't know if Mochizuki's even going to address that, but that would be a pretty easy way to explain it. Maybe I just solved a logic problem for her. Hey, congratulations. So they go off, and we see Brake sort of dying, and he seems to have this moment where he's going to go by himself, and then finally Rhyme and Sharon show up, and he complains that you guys ruined my, moment. I was going to go out alone and everything else, but it had to be those two with him at his final moment. It had to be. We had to have that moment. And then we have the final bit of his conversation with Shelley and about the whole light of hope. Like, this this volume ended a lot of characters. You know, as I'm sitting here, I realize I haven't even addressed Zai Vesalius and his outcome. And this was, again, a great example of Mochizuki's art and her style and the thinking that has gone into this series from day one. Like, have you noticed that Zai's eyes have never been shown? They've never been shown. Not in 21 volumes of manga have they been shown. But they're shown here as Zai is dying. And as Oz confesses, you know, I wish that we could have talked more. And Zai sort of spits out like a couple of insults, but as he seems to sort of slide down the wall and Oz walks away, you get the impression that maybe he's softened a little bit on Oz. Maybe just a little bit. But this is the first time we see Zai's eyes, and even Oz says, I never noticed up to this point what his eyes were like, and that his eyes, you know, seemed to have this look to them, and, you know, because I would always look down or what have you, and it's the same for us, the readers. It's the first time we see his eyes too. So I thought that was a really great thing about the whole art sort of following the character's experience, and that it makes the reader the same thing. We have not seen Zai's eyes, and now Oz is saying he's never really seen Zai's eyes. And just, this is, to me, this series is a great, like, textbook about how to write a really good manga series. We've had some great characters. We have great character moments. We have this great artwork that is very expressive, sometimes slightly over the top, but mostly not. And now we have this moment with Zai and Oz, and we, the readers, sort of share and participate in it because it's the first time we've ever seen his eyes too. I just thought that was really, really poetic and just incredibly well done. And I have talked again and again about Mochizuki and how she does eyes and facial expressions to express changes, like where Oz would become Jack, or, you know, all those kind of things. So it shouldn't surprise me, but man, I thought that was brilliant. Because up to this point, I always was like, why does she not draw this guy with his eyes? Like, why do we never, ever see his eyes? And here it is. Perfect. Perfect. So, I'm going to end the video here because I think I've touched on most of the main points. As always, if there's something I missed or something you would like to talk about more, please put it down into the comments and we can talk about it. That's amazing. I love being able to chat with you all about this series. Only 2 more to go. If you didn't leave any suggestions for series that I can continue doing these kind of videos with in the last video, by all means, do it here. Thank you so much for watching. This one's a little bit longer, but I mean, it was a really, really pivotal episode this time and just contained some great work. So thank you so much for watching. I will be back next week with the second last volume, volume number 23, which this volume, funny enough, advertises as being the last episode, but I'm kind of glad it's not, because I don't know if you could fill everything in just one volume, which is probably why she did it that way. So, you know, awesome. So I will see you then. Until next week, bye-bye for now.